Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I now recognize Mr. Garcia from California for 5 minutes.
Now, I think actually Chairwoman Greene supports everything that the Trump administration is actually doing. So instead of a serious hearing, we're here to attack NPR and PBS. So let's get right into it. Now, Ms. Kerger, the American people want to know, is Elmo now, or has he ever been, a member of the Communist Party of the United States? A yes or no?
No.
Now, are you sure, Ms. Kerger? Because he's obviously red.
What's up, everybody? Major Retired Richard Ojeda here. And has Elmo now or even been a member of the Communist Party? Yeah, you heard that right. During a congressional hearing chaired by Marge the Trainwreck Greene, a real-life Miss Piggy with less charm and more conspiracy theories, Representative Robert Garcia actually asked a witness if Elmo was part of a communist plot.
He also has a very dangerous message about sharing and helping each other. He's indoctrinating our kids that sharing is caring. Now, maybe he's part of a major socialist plot, and maybe that's why the chairwoman is having this hearing today. But let's talk about somebody else. Let's talk about Cookie Monster. Now, we know that Health Secretary RFK Jr. is coming out against fast food and baked goods. Are we silencing pro-cookie voters? Yes or no? Ms. Kerger.
But cookies are a sometime food.
Well, thank you. And now, I agree with you. And let's also talk about the most important, maybe, character on Sesame Street. This is actually Big Bird. Now, Ms. Kerger, since Elon Musk actually fired USDA workers who have been working on the bird flu, does it make sense to also fire Big Bird? Yes or no?
We would like to keep Big Bird.
This wasn't Saturday morning. This wasn't some forgotten sketch on Mad TV. This was a real-life Doge subcommittee hearing where the future of funding for NPR and PBS was being decided. Apparently, Sesame Street is now a national threat again, because instead of discussing the economy, national security breaches, or why veterans can't access their benefits, Republicans used your taxpayer dollars to interrogate Elmo, Big Bird, and whether Bernie and Ert were leading an extreme homosexual agenda.
This, of course, is Bert and Ernie. Now, these two guys actually live together. They're friends. They're supportive of each other. Now, that might be triggering to our chairwoman and some on this committee, and perhaps that's also why we're here today. Ms. Kerger, an important question. Are Bert and Ernie part of an extreme homosexual agenda?
No.
Thank you, Ms. Kerger, and thank you for being a good sport. Now, I'm obviously using some humor here, but the fact that we're sitting here today talking about defunding public television is actually not funny. At a time where we can't agree on basic facts, and while the free press is under attack, we need public media like PBS and NPR more than ever. A large majority of Americans say they trust PBS. And that's exactly why extremists are trying to tear it down. Public broadcasting is a tool for education, for emergencies, and a cherished part of our national fabric. We get huge benefits from a tiny federal investment. The majority and our chairwoman should drop this attempt to silence media voices they don't like. So the message, I think, today is very, very simple. If we're going to get rid of any puppeteers, we should get rid of the one that's actually controlling Donald Trump. Fire Elon Musk and save Elmo.
Representative Robert Garcia wasn't fooling around. He was holding up a mirror to the chaos. This wasn't a hearing. It was a MAGA culture war carnival. The topic, whether PBS and NPR should continue to receive federal funding. But that's not what this was about. This was about turning public broadcasting into enemy number one. And Garcia knew it. So he walked the audience through their paranoid fever dream, one puppet at a time. First up, Elmo. He's red, he shares. That's socialism, apparently. Garcia hit the point with surgical mockery. He teaches kids that sharing is caring. And, in Greene's world, that's all it takes to label you a Marxist sleeper cell. Then came Cookie Monster. Are we silencing pro-cookie voters? Garcia asked, and sure, it got a laugh, but it wasn't a joke. These are the same Republicans who want to ban poor people from buying cookies with EBT cards. Sorry, no food stamps for you. Better start drinking raw milk. Give up fluoride toothpaste, and if you're lucky, maybe RFK Jr. will bless you with some toad venom and a third eye awakening. Big Bird, the second that the big yellow bird tweeted about getting his COVID shot, the anti-vax meltdown was instant. Garcia nailed it. Since Elon Musk fired USDA scientists, maybe we should fire Big Bird too. And that hit a nerve, because Greene herself is deep in that anti-vax cult, peddling RFK's junk science like it's scripture. But the moment everything froze was when Garcia brought up Bert and Ernie. These two guys live together, he said. They support each other. They're good role models. And then he asked the question, are Bert and Ernie part of an extreme homosexual agenda? The air got thick. You could feel the silence drop like a curtain. The CEO sat there with professionalism on full display and simply said, no, calm, clear, and direct. But the fact that she even had to answer that question, to sit there and be asked if two puppets were pushing a gay agenda on children, shows exactly how far off the deep end that this entire party has gone. It wasn't oversight. It was a witch trial for Muppets. This hearing wasn't about cutting costs. It was about purging values. Elmo represents equality. Cookie Monster, poverty and excess. Big Bird, science and public health. Bert and Ernie, inclusion. And every single one of them is under attack. But this was never about Sesame Street. This is about silencing anything that they can't control or that they don't like. So after Robert Garcia finished roasting the whole puppet trial with truth and sarcasm, here comes Representative Tim Burchett, walking in like he's about to save the day with a pitch for Steve Bannon.
In terms of federal funding, the federal funds go to support our operation of the public radio satellite system, which enables all of our local stations to be able to communicate information and broadcast, including...
As stated earlier, ma'am, funding is very fungible. It flows wherever it needs to. I don't buy that argument.
We do have
I
a
wonder
separate
if any
balance
of the
sheet for
members
that,
of the
sir.
committee would comment real quickly. Would you agree that Real America's Voice, Newsmax, Fox, or News Nation, if they were to see federal funds, would you all support that? Yes or no? Mr. Ullman, yes or no?
I'd have to get back to you on that.
Ma'am?
Yeah.
I actually don't have an opinion about that.
Ma'am?
I don't have an opinion about that, sir. That would be Congress's decision.
Thank you, Chair Lady.
That's right. The MAGA logic here is simple. If PBS and NPR aren't bending the knee to Trumpism, they don't deserve your tax dollars. But Newsmax, Fox News, Real America's Voice, maybe even Bannon's War Room. Yeah, let's talk about giving them the federal funding. Burchett literally asked the panel if they'd support redirecting funds to those outlets. He didn't say it as a joke. One said they'd get back to him. The other had no opinion, because how do you even respond to that without laughing or screaming? Let's be clear. This wasn't some random throwaway comment. This was the goal. Defund facts, fund fanaticism, pull the plug on Big Bird, and hand the mic to Bannon.
I have been, even the enemy, because they are the enemy, what they've said, even that enemy too, and they're really the enemy. They're the enemy of the people, the press.
Not to be dramatic, but U.S. media is under attack, and while you could argue that changes needed to be made to the media landscape, you could also argue that these weren't the changes that most of us had in mind. I know there's too much going on right now for any of us to keep up with, let alone to wrap our heads around. But as we all clamor to stay informed, while also attempting to maintain our sanity, while we're deliberately being emotionally manipulated, just staying informed has become a challenge. And yes, that's also deliberate. We live in a time when the media is controlled by a handful of billionaires, all or most of whom have bent the knee to Trump. Those who haven't have already experienced some version of his wrath. For instance, according to The Guardian, Trump's new federal communications chair, Brendan Carr, is reported to have ordered an investigation into the sponsorship practices of taxpayer-supported NPR and PBS member stations, a media network long hated by conservatives who accuse it of a liberal slant. Over at CNN, anchors and journalists received instruction from Chief Executive Mark Thompson to not express outrage while covering Trump. CNN also moved popular host and Trump's bane, Jim Acosta, to a time slot that was known as the Siberia of TV news, a move that ultimately prompted Acosta to leave the network altogether.
It is never a good time to bow down to a tyrant. I've always believed it's the job of the press to hold power to account. I've always tried to do that here at CNN, and I plan on doing all of that in the future. One final message. Don't give in to the lies. Don't give in to the fear. Hold on to the truth. and to hope.
At CBS, its parent company Paramount is currently in talks to settle a $10 billion claim from the Trump team that it edited a 60 Minutes interview with Kamala Harris unfairly in a way that made Trump look bad. According to Trump lawyer Edward Paltzik, real accountability for CBS and Paramount will ensure that the president is compensated for the harm done to him and will deter the fake news from further distorting the facts to advance a partisan agenda. At ABC, the network paid Trump $15 million to settle a defamation suit after George Stephanopoulos said that Trump had been found civilly liable of rape, and even Meta, run by Trump lackey Mark Zuckerberg, had to pay $25 million to Trump for booting Trump from its platforms in 2021. In other words, being on Trump's bad side, as most media is bad for business. Hence, networks are already wary of presenting information that could be perceived as a slight against him, and we all know that Trump has a fragile and easily bruised ego. The tiptoeing that would be necessary to keep him appeased and abated could, in some cases, be argued to be presenting news in a way that is inaccurate or misleading. As Michael LaRosa, the spokesperson for former First Lady Jill Biden, put it, he's dictating the news on his terms. He's become America's assignment editor. But when Trump first started disparaging the media back in 2015, when he started tweeting about fake news on a near daily basis, when people said back then that this was a problem that would lead to much bigger problems, we were all told that it wasn't that serious, that he was right to be critical of the news in this specific way, that we were overreacting when we all said that these are the words of a wannabe dictator. It wasn't even that far-fetched back then. Just look at dictators or authoritarian leaders around the world throughout history. They often, if not always, disparage and discredit the media before either dismantling it completely or seizing control over it. Controlling and limiting access to reliable and verifiable information is an incredibly effective way to control a population.